The year was 2157 and humanity had spread beyond Earth. People lived on Mars now, in large domed cities that gleamed under the red sky. Smaller groups of humans worked on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, mining resources and studying the outer planets. Earth remained the center of human civilization, but people looked to the stars with hope instead of just wonder. Captain Ellie Morgan stood on the bridge of the UESC Frontier, watching the stars through the large front window. At 42, she had spent half her life in space. Her dark hair was cut short for convenience, and her blue uniform showed her rank with simple silver bars on the shoulders. The Frontier was a diplomatic vessel, designed to show the best of humanity to any aliens they might meet. "Captain, we're picking up a strange energy reading," said Lieutenant Jack Peterson from his station. His fingers moved across the screens as he tried to get more information. "It's not like anything in our database." Ellie walked over to his station and looked at the readings. "How far away?" "About 50,000 kilometers near Pluto's orbit," Peterson said. He was young, only 28, with light brown hair and keen eyes that rarely missed details. "Could it be a natural phenomenon?" Ellie asked, though she doubted it. "No, ma'am. The pattern is too regular. It has to be artificial." Ellie nodded and turned to her communications officer. "Ensign Garcia, send a standard greeting message toward those coordinates, all available languages." Maria Garcia nodded, her hands already working the controls. At 30, she was the ship's language expert, trained to establish first contact protocols. "Message sent, Captain." The bridge fell silent as everyone waited. This was what they had trained for, what humanity had been hoping for since people first looked at the stars, contact with another intelligent species. After several minutes, the main screen lit up with an incoming transmission. The image showed a creature unlike anything they had seen before. It had bluish skin that seemed to shimmer slightly, 4 long arms, and a face with 3 large eyes arranged in a triangle pattern. Behind it, other similar creatures moved around, what appeared to be their ship's bridge. "Greetings, humans of Sol System," the alien said in slightly mechanical but understandable English. "We are the Vracs, representatives of the Galactic Concordat." Ellie stepped forward. "I am Captain Ellie Morgan of the United Earth Space Command vessel Frontier. We welcome peaceful contact with your people." The alien made a gesture with its upper arms. "I am Ambassador Zornex. We have been observing your system for some time. Your development has reached a point where formal contact is now appropriate." "We would be honored to meet in person," Ellie said. "Would you accept an invitation aboard our vessel?" The alien seemed to consider this. "Acceptable. We will send a diplomatic shuttle. Prepare your docking bay." 2 hours later, Ellie stood in the Frontier's meeting room with her senior officers. The room had been specially designed for first contact scenarios, with a round table symbolizing equality and neutral decorations from various Earth cultures. The ship's security chief, Lieutenant Ryan Foster, looked nervous. "Captain, are you sure about this? We know nothing about these aliens." "That's why we're here, Foster," Ellie replied, "to learn about what's beyond our solar system." The doors slid open and 3 Vracs entered. In person, they were tall, nearly 7 feet, and moved with unusual grace. Their forearms moved independently of each other, and their blue skin had patterns that seemed to shift slightly as they moved. Ambassador Zornex took a seat across from Ellie, while the other 2 Vracs remained standing. "Your vessel is adequate," Zornex said, looking around. "Simple but functional." Lieutenant Peterson frowned slightly at the condescending tone but kept silent. "Thank you for accepting our invitation," Ellie said diplomatically. "We have many questions about your people and the Galactic Concordat you mentioned." "The Concordat is the ruling body of civilized space," Zornex explained. 37 spacefaring species who have maintained peace for over 8,000 years, through proper hierarchy and order. "And where would humanity fit into this hierarchy?" asked Dr. Sam Lewis, the ship's science officer. Zornex made a gesture that might have been the Vrac's equivalent of a shrug. "All new species enter at the lowest tier, of course. You would surrender your military capabilities and accept guidance on technological development. Your resources would be managed by the Concordat for optimal utilization. The room went silent as the humans processed this information. Surrender our military? Lieutenant Foster asked, unable to hide his shock. Why would we do that? It is the way of the Concordat, said one of the standing Vraks. New species must prove their civilization's worth before gaining privileges. Ellie leaned forward. Ambassador, while we're interested in peaceful relations, we cannot surrender our sovereignty or defense capabilities. Perhaps we could discuss a more equal arrangement? All three Vraks made the same motion, a ripple of their upper arms that conveyed clear surprise. There is no negotiation on these terms, Zornek said. Your species has barely left its cradle. You have one small colony on Mars and a few outposts on moons. Your technology is primitive. You cannot possibly hope to resist the Concordat's will. Peterson's face reddened. Primitive? We developed faster-than-light communications only 15 years ago, and our first FTL ship is nearly complete. Yes, said Zornex, and the Vraks mastered those technologies 5,000 years ago. The Eltari, who lead the Concordat, had them. Before your species learned to make fire, Ellie kept her voice calm. Ambassador, humanity has always valued its independence. We would gladly join a galactic community as equals, sharing knowledge and culture but not as servants. Zornek stood up, towering over the seated humans. Your choice is simple. Join the Concordat under our terms, or face extinction. Primitive. Species who develop spaceflight must be controlled or eliminated. That is the law that keeps peace. Are you threatening Earth? Foster asked, his hand moving instinctively toward the weapon at his hip. Not threatening. Simply stating fact, Zornex replied. We offer you 1 month by your time measurement to communicate with your leaders and prepare for integration. When we return, we expect your unconditional surrender. And if we refuse? Ellie asked, though she already knew the answer. Then your species will be removed, your planets harvested for resources, and this conversation will be forgotten by the galaxy. Zornex turned to leave, the other Vraks following. 1 month, Captain Morgan. Inform your leaders. As they reached the door, Zornex turned back. Reconsider your position, primitives. The alternative is extinction. Ellie stood, drawing herself up to her full height even though she was still much shorter than the aliens. Then I suppose you've just declared war on humanity. The Vraks made that strange rippling gesture again, surprise perhaps mixed with amusement. War? Your species knows nothing of war as the galaxy understands it, Zornek said. But you will learn. After the Vraks had departed and their ship had moved away, the bridge of the frontier was somber. Ellie sat in her captain's chair, recording her report to Earth Command. They see us as children, Peterson said quietly. Primitive and weak. That's their mistake, Ellie replied. Throughout human history, underestimating us has been a fatal error. What do you think Earth will do, Captain? Asked Garcia. Ellie looked at the stars on the main screen, imagining the vast galaxy beyond, filled with wonders, but also threats they had never imagined. What we've always done when backed into a corner, she said. Fight, adapt, surprise, them. She finished her report and sent it toward Earth at FTL speeds. We have 1 month to prepare for a war we never wanted, against an enemy we just met. Foster nodded grimly. Those aliens have no idea what they just started. No, Ellie agreed. But they're about to find out exactly what happens when you declare war on humanity. The frontier turned and accelerated toward Earth, racing to deliver their warning in person. Behind them, in the darkness of space, the Vraks ship watched them go, unaware that they had just made the greatest miscalculation in their species' long history. The UESC frontier reached Earth in 4 days, breaking speed records in its rush to deliver the warning. Captain Ellie Morgan stood before the United Nations Security Council, her uniform crisp despite her exhaustion. On the large screens around the room, leaders from Mars and the outer colonies joined remotely. The recording of our meeting with the Vraks has been shared with you all, Ellie said, looking at the grim faces around her. They've given us 1 month to surrender or face extinction. The room erupted in angry voices and frightened questions. President Diane Cole, a tall woman with silver-streaked black hair, raised her hand for silence. At 63, she had led the United Earth government through Mars independence talks and the Jupiter mining crisis. But nothing had prepared her for this. Captain Morgan, President Cole said, "In your opinion, how serious is this threat?" "Deadly. Serious, Madam President. Their technology is centuries beyond ours. One of their ships could likely destroy our entire fleet." A heavy silence fell over the room. "Then perhaps we should consider their terms," suggested the Chinese representative, "at least until we can build our strength." "Their terms mean the end of human freedom," said General Frank Martinez, head of Earth's military forces. He was a stocky man with a weathered face and practical mind. "They want us to disarm completely and hand over control of our resources. We'd be slaves in everything but name." President Cole nodded. "I agree. Throughout human history, surrender to those who demand complete submission has never ended well." She stood up, her decision made. "We fight." Within hours, the news spread worldwide. Unlike movies where aliens appeared suddenly over major cities, humanity had a month to prepare. Some people panicked, emptying stores and fleeing to rural areas. Others joined military recruitment lines that stretched for blocks. In Geneva, Dr. Alan Wright worked without sleep in his laboratory. Before the Vrax ultimatum, his faster-than-light drive research had been considered interesting but impractical, funded just enough to keep going. Now, his lab was filled with new equipment and staff as the government poured resources into his work. "We've been approaching this all wrong," Alan told his team, running a hand through his messy brown hair. At 38, he had been called brilliant, but impractical by his colleagues. Now they listened carefully to every word. "We've been trying to copy what we think alien FTL drives might work like. But humans have always found our own ways to solve problems." His colleague, Dr. Susan Kelly, nodded in agreement. A brilliant engineer at 42, she had been analyzing the limited scan data from the Vrax ship. "Their shield technology uses principles we've barely theorized about, but I think I see a weakness. In military bases around the world, soldiers trained for a war unlike any they had fought before." General Martinez addressed his officers at the North American Command Center. "We're outgunned and outmatched technologically," he explained, pointing to simulations of Vrax ships based on the Frontier's scans. "But we have something they don't expect. We've been preparing for war against ourselves for centuries." "What's our strategy, sir?" asked a young officer. "Adaptation," Martinez replied. "Humans have always been good at taking a beating, learning from it, and coming back stronger. We won't win the first battle, maybe not even the 10th, but we'll learn from each one." In orbit, construction teams worked around the clock, converting space stations into defensive platforms. Mining ships returned from the asteroid belt loaded with metals for emergency shipbuilding. Every spacecraft with weapons capability was retrofitted for war. President Cole addressed the world from the UN headquarters. "Throughout our history, humans have fought one another over resources, ideology, and territory. Today, we must set aside those differences or face extinction as a species." Her words resonated across continents. Former enemies offered help to each other. Scientists shared research that had been closely guarded secrets. The people of Earth, united as never before, driven by the simple desire to survive. In her lab in Tokyo, engineer Yuki Tanaka developed new weapons based on principles similar to the Vrax technology. "We can't match their power," she explained to military officers, watching her demonstration. "But we can disrupt it." She activated a small device that created a focused electromagnetic pulse. This won't harm their ships, but it might briefly interfere with their shields. A small window, but maybe enough. 3 weeks after first contact, humanity had accomplished what might normally have taken years. Defensive platforms circled Earth. A fleet of hastily armed ships stood ready. On Mars, colonists prepared underground shelters and their own defense systems. Dr. Wright's team had made unexpected progress. "It won't be ready for full FTL travel," he told President Cole during a video call. But we've developed a short-range jump drive. Our ships can make quick jumps in battle, appear, fire, and vanish before the Vraks can respond. Will it be enough? President Cole asked. No, Wright admitted. But it might confuse them. And in war, confusion can be as valuable as firepower. As the deadline approached, children were moved to shelters in mountain regions and underground facilities. Cities implemented blackout conditions to make them harder to target from orbit. Earth prepared for a war unlike any in human history. On the final day before the deadline, the Vraks returned. Their ships appeared near the moon, 5 vessels of varying sizes, all dwarfing Earth's largest spacecraft. Admiral Patricia Rivera commanded Earth's orbital defense from the space station Aegis. A former submarine captain, she understood fighting against superior forces. Hold positions, she ordered her fleet. Let them make the first move. The largest Vrak ship moved forward, and a communication signal reached Earth's defense network. Humans of Sol system, came the familiar voice of Ambassador Zornex. Your deadline has arrived. We see you have built defenses. Impressive for primitives, but futile. Surrender now, and we will be merciful. The signal was broadcast worldwide. In shelters and homes, in military bases and spacecraft, humans watched and waited for their leader's response. President Cole stood in the Global Command Center beneath Geneva. General Martinez and other military leaders surrounded her. On screens, leaders from every nation waited for her decision. There was no debate. They had decided their course weeks ago. Admiral Rivera, President Cole said, please respond to the Vraks. On the Aegis station, Rivera faced the communication screen. Her uniform was adorned with a single pin, a small image of Earth, a reminder of what they fought for. This is Admiral Patricia Rivera of United Earth Defense Forces, she said, her voice calm but firm. Humanity doesn't surrender. If you want our planet, you'll have to fight for every inch. Across Earth's surface, people held their breath. Some prayed. Others simply waited. Parents held their children close, wondering what world they would inherit. Very well, Zornex responded. You have chosen extinction. May your species be remembered as brave, if foolish. The communication ended. For several long moments, nothing happened. Then the Vrak ships began to move, spreading out to surround Earth. In the command center, General Martinez looked at the tactical display. And so it begins, he said quietly. President Cole nodded. Send the signal to all forces. Operation Defiance is now active. Throughout the solar system, humanity prepared for its first interstellar war. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy with thousands of years of technological advantage. But they had one thing the Vraks had never encountered before: the stubborn, relentless will to survive that had carried humanity from caves to the stars. The first shots were about to be fired in a war that would determine if humanity had a future among the stars. The Vrak ships moved into attack formation with practiced precision. Earth's defenders watched on their screens as the alien vessels spread out, their movements suggesting they had done this many times before. For the Vraks, this was routine, another primitive species to be conquered or eliminated. They're powering weapons, reported Lieutenant Steve Baker on the command deck of the Aegis station. His voice remained steady, despite the fear he felt. At 30, this was his first real combat situation. Admiral Rivera nodded calmly. All ships maintain position. Defense platforms hold fire until my command. Across the solar system, humans watched through camera feeds. In underground shelters, in homes, in colonial outposts on Mars, billions held their breath. This was humanity's first interstellar battle, and everyone knew the odds were against them. The Vraks fired first. Beams of energy unlike anything humans had seen before lanced out from their ships. They struck the outer defense platforms, which exploded instantly, unable to withstand the power directed at them. First line of defense platforms lost, Baker reported, his voice tight. As expected, Rivera replied. She had known those outer platforms wouldn't last long. Their purpose was to measure the Vrax weapons, gather data on their attack patterns, and buy time. The Vrax ships advanced toward Earth, firing again. More defense platforms exploded. Earth's fleet, a mixture of military, vessels, and armed civilian ships, began to move forward. "Fleet engaging," General Martinez reported from the Ground Command Center. God help them. Earth ships fired their weapons, missiles, energy beams, railguns, everything humanity had developed. The smaller Vrax ships took evasive action, but the largest vessel simply allowed the attacks to hit its shields, which flickered slightly but held firm. The Vrax counterattack was devastating. 20 human ships destroyed in the first volley, 30 more damaged and retreating. In her lab beneath Geneva, Dr. Susan Kelly watched the battle through a live feed, analyzing the Vrax shield reactions. "There," she said suddenly, pointing to a particular pattern in the data. "When multiple weapon types hit simultaneously, there's a micro-fluctuation in their shield pattern." She grabbed her communicator. "Dr. Wright, are you seeing this?" In his own lab, Alan Wright was already nodding. "Yes, the shields have to reconfigure for different types of attacks. There's a millisecond delay. Not enough time to exploit with conventional weapons," Susan said. "But what about Ben's device?" Alan suggested. Engineer Ben Harper had been working on the electromagnetic pulse device designed to disrupt Vrax technology. At 35, he had spent his career developing communication systems, not weapons. But war changed everyone's priorities. "It's not battle-tested," Ben said, looking at the prototype, "and we only have 6 working units." "6 chances is better than none," Susan replied. "Get them to Commander Rodriguez immediately." On the fast attack vessel, UESC Swift, Commander Nicole Rodriguez received the urgent transmission. "You want us to do what?" she asked, looking at the small devices being loaded onto her ship. "Get close enough to use these on their shields," Dr. Kelly explained. "They create a focused EMP that might temporarily disrupt their shield technology. You'll have maybe 3 seconds before their systems compensate." 3 seconds isn't much," Rodriguez said. "It's all we've got," replied Kelly. Rodriguez looked at her crew, 12 men and women who had volunteered for what everyone knew was likely a suicide mission. "You heard the doctor. We're taking these devices to deliver a very special package to our new alien friends." In space, the battle was going badly for humanity. Nearly a third of Earth's fleet was already destroyed or disabled. The defense platforms were falling one by one. The Vrax advanced steadily, seemingly unstoppable. "Ships fall back to secondary defensive positions," Admiral Rivera ordered. She needed to buy time for Rodriguez's squadron to get into position. The Vrax main ship opened another communication channel. "Your resistance is impressive but futile," said the Vrax commander, a different individual than Ambassador Zornax, but with the same condescending tone. "Surrender now, and we may spare some of your population for labor purposes." Rivera didn't bother to respond. Instead, she signaled to Martinez. "Is Rodriguez in position?" "Almost," the general replied. "Her squadron is approaching from behind the moon, using its mass to hide their heat signatures." Commander Rodriguez led 5 small, fast ships, the fastest in Earth's fleet. They had practiced this maneuver for days, though never against real Vrax technology. "Remember," she told her pilots, "we only get 1 shot at this. Make it count." The squadron accelerated from behind the moon, pushing their engines beyond safe limits. They needed speed and surprise for this to work. "Vrax ships have spotted Rodriguez's squadron," Baker reported on the Aegis. "All remaining forces, concentrate." "Fire on the Vrax fleet," Rivera ordered. "Give them something else to worry about." Earth's remaining ships and defense platforms opened fire simultaneously. The attack didn't damage the Vrax ships significantly, but it did draw their attention forward, away from the small squadron approaching from behind. "We're in range," Rodriguez reported as her ships closed in on 2 of the smaller Vrax vessels. "Deploying EMP devices now." Each of the 6 ships launched its device toward a Vrax vessel. 4 were destroyed by automated defense systems. 2 reached their targets. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the shields on 2 Vrax ships flickered and disappeared. "Shields down," Rodriguez reported. "Repeat, 2 Vrax ships have lost shields. All weapons concentrate on those targets," Rivera commanded. Every operational defense platform and ship redirected their fire toward the vulnerable Vrax vessels. Without their shields, the alien ships proved surprisingly fragile. One exploded almost immediately under the concentrated fire. The second managed to reactivate partial shields, but not before suffering severe damage. The remaining Vrax ships broke formation, clearly surprised by this unexpected development. Their perfect attack plan had been disrupted. "Rodriguez, get your squadron out of there," Rivera ordered. "Trying, Admiral," Rodriguez replied as her ships took evasive action. 3 of her vessels were destroyed by Vrax counterfire. Her own ship was hit, systems failing as she struggled to maintain control. The Vrax commander's image appeared again on Earth's communication screens. For the first time, the alien appeared unsettled. "This changes nothing," the Vrax said, though its confidence seemed diminished. "We will return with a proper invasion fleet." The Vrax ships began to retreat, moving quickly away from Earth. The damaged vessels struggled to keep up, venting atmosphere into space. "They're running," Baker said in disbelief. "Not running," Rivera corrected. "Regrouping. They didn't expect resistance. Now they'll come back prepared." As the Vrax ships disappeared into faster-than-light travel, cheers erupted across human settlements. They had won the first battle. But the victory had come at a terrible cost. Nearly 40% of Earth's hastily assembled fleet destroyed, thousands of lives lost. Rodriguez's damaged ship limped back toward Earth. Of her squadron of 6 ships, only 2 had survived. "We did it," she said quietly to her remaining crew. "We actually hurt them." In the command center beneath Geneva, President Cole ordered a moment of silence for the fallen. Then she addressed humanity's forces. "Today we've shown that humans will not go quietly into the night. But this is just the beginning. The Vrax will return, and we must be ready." General Martinez studied the battle data, already planning new strategies. "We've learned something important today," he told his staff. "The Vrax aren't invincible. They can be hurt, and anything that can be hurt can be defeated." Dr. Wright and Dr. Kelly were already working on improvements to the shield-disrupting technology. "If we can reproduce the effect on a larger scale," Wright said, excitement in his voice despite his exhaustion, "we might have a real chance." As night fell over Earth, humans looked up at the stars with new understanding. The universe was more dangerous than they had imagined, but they had proven themselves capable of fighting back. The Vrax had expected an easy conquest. Instead, they had received a painful lesson about humanity's determination to survive. The war had just begun, but humanity had made its statement to the galaxy. Declaring war on humans was a serious mistake, one the Vrax would soon come to regret. 6 months passed after the first battle. 6 months of frantic preparation as humanity readied itself for the return of the Vrax. The wreckage of the destroyed Vrax ship provided valuable information. Scientists worked day and night to understand alien technology that seemed almost magical to human understanding. Dr. Alan Wright stood before the World Defense Council, dark circles under his eyes from months of minimal sleep. "We've done it," he announced, his voice showing both pride and exhaustion. "We've reverse-engineered limited faster-than-light capabilities from the Vrax wreckage." The room full of military and political leaders erupted in murmurs of surprise and hope. "How limited?" asked President Cole, who had aged years in just 6 months. "We can't match their long-range capabilities," Alan admitted. "But we can make short jumps within a solar system, enough to establish hidden outposts beyond Earth and to give our ships a tactical advantage in combat." General Martinez nodded with approval. "Perfect for the strategy we've developed." That strategy was born of necessity. Human ships couldn't match Vrax technology in direct combat. Their only hope was to fight differently, to use tactics the Vrax wouldn't expect from a primitive species. Earth had used the 6-month respite wisely. Underground manufacturing facilities had produced hundreds of new ships, smaller and faster than before. Defense platforms now had the shield-disrupting technology that had proven effective in the first battle. Most importantly, humanity had a plan, one that played to their strengths rather than trying to match Vrak's power directly. Captain Greg Daniels commanded the UESC Defiance, hidden in the asteroid belt. At 45, he had spent most of his career patrolling Earth's solar system. Now he waited with his crew among the rocks and ice, one of dozens of ships hidden throughout the system. "Sensor contact," reported his navigation officer. "Multiple ships entering the system near Neptune's orbit." "How many?" Greg asked, moving to the tactical display. 53 vessels, various sizes, but all larger than our heaviest cruisers. Greg took a deep breath. Intelligence had predicted the Vraks would return with a much larger force, but seeing the actual numbers was still sobering. "Send the alert signal. Code Hornet's Nest is now active." Throughout the solar system, hidden human vessels received the signal. None responded with more than a simple acknowledgement. Radio silence was essential to the plan. The Vrak's fleet moved steadily toward Earth, their formation suggesting confidence bordering on arrogance. When they reached Earth's orbit, they found something unexpected. Nothing. No defense platforms, no fleet of ships. The orbital stations appeared abandoned. On the Vrak's command ship, Supreme Commander Vorx studied the readings with suspicion. "Scan for life signs on the planet," he ordered. "Life signs detected," reported a subordinate, "but scattered and minimal. No large population centers showing energy usage." Vorx made a gesture of confusion with his forearms. "Have they evacuated? Where would primitives go?" While the Vraks tried to understand the situation, Captain Daniels received the signal he had been waiting for. "Operation Hornet's Nest is a go," he ordered. "All hands to battle stations." Across the solar system, hidden, human vessels emerged from concealment. They didn't form a battle line or engage the superior Vrak's fleet directly. Instead, they executed precisely planned hit-and-run attacks. 3 small ships appeared behind a Vrak's vessel through short FTL jumps, fired their weapons at the same point on its shields, then disappeared again before the Vrak's could properly target them. Similar attacks happened simultaneously across the Vrak's fleet. "They're using faster-than-light technology," Vorx said in disbelief. "That's impossible. Their species is too primitive." "Apparently not, Commander," said his second-in-command, "and they're using it in ways our tactical systems aren't programmed to counter." The Vraks, expecting conventional warfare, found themselves frustrated by human guerrilla tactics. Their superior technology meant little when they couldn't bring it to bear on an enemy that refused to fight on their terms. Meanwhile, Dr. Susan Kelly led a daring mission. Using a small stealth ship with experimental cloaking technology derived from studying Vrak sensors, she approached the damaged Vrak's vessel that had been limping at the rear of their fleet. "Boarding team ready," reported her security officer, a former Special Forces soldier named Paul Wilson. Susan nodded. "Remember, our priority is their data systems. We need to be in and out in 15 minutes. The boarding was risky but successful. While the main Vrak's fleet was distracted by the hit-and-run attacks, Susan's team attached to the damaged section of the ship and cut their way inside. The few Vrak's crew they encountered were quickly subdued with stun weapons specifically designed. Based on Vrak's biology, Susan found a data terminal and connected a specialized device that began downloading information. "Their security is complex," she muttered as she worked, "but they never expected anyone to physically access their systems." 14. Minutes later, the team extracted with the precious data, leaving behind timed explosives to cover their tracks. As they moved away from the Vrak ship, it erupted in a series of internal explosions. "Did you get what we needed?" Paul asked as their ship activated its cloaking device again. Susan checked the device. "More than we hoped for," she said with a grim smile. "This contains information about the entire galactic concordat." While Susan's team made their escape, the battle continued throughout the solar system. The Vraks tried to establish a blockade around Earth, but human ships would appear, strike, and vanish before they could respond effectively. "These tactics are dishonorable," Vorx complained to his officers. "They refuse to face us directly." "But effective," noted his tactical officer. We've lost 3 ships already with minimal damage to their forces. On the USC Defiance, Captain Daniels received updated battle information. The Vraks are splitting their forces, he told his crew. They're trying to cover more area to prevent our jump attacks. Exactly as General Martinez predicted, his first officer said. Daniels nodded. Signal all ships in Sector 7. Prepare for Phase 2. As the Vraks spread their forces thinner, they became more vulnerable. Human ships began coordinating their attacks, focusing on isolated Vraks vessels. Another Vraks ship was destroyed, then another. In her lab on Mars, Dr. Kelly analyzed the stolen data with growing excitement. This changes everything, she told President Cole through a secure communication channel. The Vraks have been lying about their position in the galactic hierarchy. What do you mean? Cole asked. They're not representatives of the Concordates. Leadership. They're mid-tier enforcers who often act without proper authorization. And according to this data, several Concordate species have concerns about the war against humanity. The Vraks started this war on their own? Cole asked, surprised. It appears so. They expected a quick victory to enhance their standing. They never reported their failures or requested assistance until recently. This information gave humanity new hope. They weren't fighting an entire galactic civilization, just one ambitious species that had bitten off more than it could chew. In the outer solar system, Commander Ivan Petrov led a small fleet toward Titan, one of Saturn's moons, where intelligence suggested a Vraks supply convoy would pass. His fleet waited in the thick atmosphere of Titan, hidden from Vraks sensors. Supply ships approaching, his sensor officer reported. 3 cargo vessels with 1 military escort. Petrov smiled. Perfect. All ships prepare to execute ambush plan. The human fleet erupted from Titan's atmosphere, surrounding the surprised Vraks ships. The military escort fought bravely, but was quickly overwhelmed by the coordinated attack. The cargo vessels surrendered, giving humanity its first captured Vraks technology and weapons. As the battle for the solar system entered its second week, the Vraks commander faced a difficult decision. His losses mounted with no clear path to victory. The humans refused to fight conventionally, instead using tactics that maximized their advantages and exploited Vraks' weaknesses. Send the message to Concordate Central, Vorex finally ordered. Request reinforcements and new directives. The poll response came 3 days later, and it was not what he expected. The Concordate Council demanded an explanation for his unauthorized war and ordered him to seek a ceasefire while they investigated the situation. As Vorex prepared to comply with these humiliating orders, he realized a terrible truth. He had not conquered a primitive species as expected. Instead, he had awakened a sleeping giant, one that learned and adapted faster than any species the Vraks had encountered before. The humans had done what the Vraks thought impossible. They had fought back effectively against vastly superior technology, and in doing so, had earned the attention of the Galactic Concordate itself. 1 year after first contact, representatives from humanity and the Galactic Concordate gathered aboard a neutral vessel in orbit around Jupiter. The massive Concordate diplomatic ship dwarfed the human vessels, but made no threatening moves. Ambassador Lisa Ortiz led the human delegation. At 52, she had spent her career resolving conflicts between Earth nations. Now she represented all of humanity in the most important negotiation in history. President Cole had chosen her for her calm demeanor and unwavering resolve. Remember, Cole had told her before she left Earth, we come to this table not as supplicants, but as equals. The meeting chamber aboard the Concordate vessel was designed to impress. High ceilings with strange glowing patterns, materials unknown to human science, and representatives from 5 different alien species. The Vraks delegation stood to one side, their posture suggesting shame and anger. A tall crystalline being that introduced itself as Speaker Xenoth addressed the human delegation. We of the Concordate Council have reviewed the actions of the Vraks toward your species. Their unauthorized aggression does not represent Concordate policy. Lisa nodded. We appreciate your willingness to meet. Humanity prefers peace to war, but not at the cost of our freedom. The speaker gestured toward a hovering display showing a complex hierarchy of species. As a newly discovered spacefaring civilization, we offer humanity a position within the Concordat at Tier 7. This was clearly meant to be generous. The Vraks themselves were only at Tier 4. Lisa smiled politely but shook her head. While we appreciate the offer, humanity must decline that position. Murmurs of surprise came from the assembled aliens. The Vrak's ambassador, not Zornex but another of his species, made an angry gesture. These primitives reject the Concordat's generosity? This proves their unsuitability for membership. Speaker Xenoth silenced the Vraks with a simple gesture. Explain your position, Ambassador Ortiz. Humanity has demonstrated that we can defend ourselves against technologically advanced species, Lisa said calmly. We've also shown that we prefer peaceful coexistence, but not at the cost of our sovereignty. She activated her own display, showing the rapid progress humans had made in just 1 year. In 12 months, we developed our own FTL drives, effective energy weapons and shield technology, partly from studying Virak's technology, but increasingly based on original human innovation. In 1 year of conflict, she continued, humanity advanced technologically by what would have been decades in peacetime. Imagine what we could accomplish as allies rather than enemies. The Concordat representatives conferred among themselves, clearly uncomfortable with the precedent being set. Finally, Speaker Xenoth addressed the humans again. Your species is unusual. Most races facing superior technology would capitulate or be destroyed, yet humans seem to thrive under pressure. It's our greatest strength, Lisa agreed. Throughout our history, we've faced challenges that should have destroyed us. Instead, they made us stronger. After hours of negotiation, a new agreement was reached. Humanity would join the Concordat not as a subjugated species, but as an associate member with full autonomy. In return, humans would share their unique perspective and innovative approach to problem-solving. As the treaty was signed, Speaker Xenoth made a final observation. Your species' rapid adaptation is remarkable. One wonders what humanity might become in a century or millennium. Lisa smiled. We look forward to showing you. Humanity has just taken its first steps into a larger universe, and we come in peace unless provoked. The Vrak's ambassador watched the proceedings with what might have been regret. If we had known what we were unleashing. Perhaps next time, Lisa said, you'll think twice before declaring war on humanity. As the human delegation prepared to return to Earth with news of the historic agreement, word was already spreading throughout the galaxy. A new saying began to circulate among spacefaring species. There are 3 mistakes one must never make. Never invade Russia in winter. Never start a land war in Asia, and never ever declare war on humanity.